All right, let's get into this. So here we are, talking about what many people were already expecting, the Nicki Minaj smear campaign article. And yes, I'm calling it expected for a reason. This didn't just come out of nowhere. There were signs, there were warnings, and some people were already watching closely. A journalist had actually hinted ahead of time that something was being prepared behind the scenes. According to him, there were efforts happening quietly to damage Nicki Minaj's reputation and question her legacy, all tied to certain allegations. It wasn't presented as a rumor, it was framed as something actively being worked on. Last week, we even discussed this in a separate video. That same journalist claimed he had receipts, alleged emails from individuals supposedly involved in putting these articles together. He predicted the story would drop either Thursday or Friday of that week. That timeline didn't happen. Nothing was published then. But instead of disappearing, the article surfaced today. And I remember the reaction in the comments when we first talked about it. Some of you said, "Oh my God, we don't trust anything that Republicans say. Oh my God, these are theatrics and all of these things." And my response was simple. Let us just wait and see. If the so-called article actually does come out, then it means that the Republicans were not lying about this. Well, fast forward to Monday, and the article is officially out. The claims that Nicki Minaj's posts were allegedly botted, that the reason she's been receiving massive engagement and impressions on Twitter is because of artificial amplification, that her online numbers aren't as organic as they appear. But honestly, none of this feels shocking. Attempts to question her influence are not new. For years, critics have searched for ways to downplay her impact. Whether it's chart performance, fan loyalty, or cultural relevance, there always seems to be an effort to explain it away. What makes this different is the timing. Nicki Minaj has one of the most dedicated fan bases, not just online, but in real life. These are fans who stream, who buy albums, who purchase merch, who show up to events. Their support translates into real numbers and real money. So when you see engagement at that level, it reflects more than just social media hype. And now, with this article, it almost feels like an attempt to shake that foundation, to create doubt, to plant questions, to make people second-guess the strength of her influence. Whether that strategy works or not, that's a whole different conversation. I've said it before on this channel, and I'll say it again. Some of these tactics feel outdated. It's like the people behind them are still operating with a mindset from 2005. Maybe 2008, maybe even the late 90s. The strategy feels old, recycled, predictable. Because here's the reality, the internet today is not what it used to be. Information moves fast. People fact-check in real time. Audiences are much more aware of how media narratives can be shaped, framed, and sometimes manipulated. You can't just drop a headline and expect everyone to accept it without question anymore. Years ago, publishing an article like this might have worked. It might have been enough to make people look at Nicki Minaj sideways. It might have planted doubt without much resistance. Back then, access to background information wasn't as immediate as it is now. But trying to use that same playbook in 2026, that feels careless. Within minutes of an article going live, people can look up the author. They can research the publication. They can trace the so-called sources. They can compare timelines. And before the first hour is even over, entire online communities are already analyzing it, questioning it, and in some cases, breaking it apart piece by piece while connecting the dots themselves. That kind of environment makes it harder for narratives to go unchallenged. It also doesn't help the article's credibility when a quick search shows that the writer identifies as a Democrat, especially considering that Nicki Minaj has recently been in headlines after publicly aligning herself as a Republican. That connection is going to raise eyebrows immediately, because let's be honest, this article isn't likely to convert people who already support her. The ones cheering it on are probably those who already disliked her or those who strongly support the opposing political side. So, what's the actual goal here? When people see a Democratic journalist publishing a harsh piece about a Republican artist, the political tension becomes part of the story. Whether intentional or not, that context shapes how the article is received. At the end of the day, audiences are not as easily swayed as they once were. Many can recognize patterns, many can see possible motives, and when something feels too obvious, too convenient, or too neatly aligned with political divisions, it stops being persuasive and starts looking strategic. If you're going to run a narrative in this era, it has to be smarter than this. The moment the article went live, people didn't just read the headline and move on. They immediately started digging into the details. The biggest question was simple. Who exactly are the sources behind these claims? As readers went through the article, everything seemed to trace back to one company. That company is called Sabra. At least that's how it appears to be pronounced. According to the article, this is the organization backing the accusation that Nicki Minaj has been botting her tweets to inflate engagement and impressions. Now again, this is where timing matters. In a different era, most people would have stopped right there. They would have accepted the company's name as authority and left it at that. But today, it takes seconds to run a search. And when people did that search, they started asking more questions. Looking into the company leads to information about who is behind it. One of the names connected to it is Mike G, described as a senior partner and talent agent. He's reportedly known for representing figures like Wheezy and Advo BBL. That connection alone caught people's attention. But it doesn't stop there. The company is also said to have ties to Fraudulent Nation. Now let's be real. Everyone already knows the history and tension between Nicki Minaj and Fraudulent Nation. People also know about her situation with Advo BBL. These relationships are not secret. They've been discussed publicly for years. So, when you see a company making strong claims against her, and that company appears connected to individuals or entities she has had public issues with, it naturally raises eyebrows. At that point, it stops feeling random. It makes people question whether there could be bias involved, whether there's an underlying motive, whether this is purely about data and analytics, or if there's something more personal or strategic behind it. When connections like that surface so quickly, the credibility of the accusation becomes part of the debate itself. And in today's digital world, once doubt starts spreading, it spreads fast. And this is exactly why I keep saying these smear attempts are starting to feel lazy. If you're going to try something like this, at least make it convincing. Put real effort into it. Because the way this was rolled out, it feels outdated. Like it was designed for a time when people didn't question headlines and didn't cross-check sources within minutes. This isn't the 90s anymore. That approach doesn't land the way it used to. Audiences are sharper now. They don't just react, they investigate. Instead of the article creating shock, instead of everyone saying, "Oh my God, look, Nicki has been botting," what actually happened? People immediately started digging. And I'm talking less than an hour after it was published. Timelines were examined, connections were exposed. Alleged ties to Nicki Minaj's known rivals were pointed out almost instantly. So rather than the article controlling the narrative, the public started controlling it. And here's another thing. If you're going to build a case against someone, why rely on individuals who already have a history of tension with that person? That alone weakens the credibility. If you want the claims to feel neutral, you don't bring in people who clearly have had issues with her before. That just makes it look personal. Then there's the decision to include Gavin Newsom's comments. That move didn't strengthen the article. It made it look even more strategic. It's no secret that Nicki and Newsom don't exactly align. So adding his voice into the mix doesn't scream neutrality. It feels calculated. At that point, the whole thing starts looking less like investigative reporting and more like political theater. When readers can easily connect the dots between past conflicts, political affiliations, and the people being quoted, the impact of the article shifts. Instead of damaging its target, it opens the door for people to question the motives behind it. And once that doubt creeps in, the focus isn't even on the accusation anymore. It's on who's pushing it and why. All right, here's a strong 1-minute closing hook you can use. And at the end of the day, this whole situation says more about the people pushing the narrative than it does about Nicki Minaj. Because if the goal was to expose something real, it wouldn't fall apart within the first hour. It wouldn't take the internet 5 minutes to connect the dots and question the motives. That's not how solid reporting works. Instead of shaking her influence, this just reminded everyone how powerful she actually is. You don't launch coordinated stories about artists who are irrelevant. You don't scramble to discredit someone who doesn't matter. The very existence of this article proves one thing. Her impact is still strong enough to make people uncomfortable. But now I want to hear from you. Do you think this was a genuine investigation? Or does this feel like another attempt to control the narrative? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about it.